An entire Amish family of 7 vanished from their Ohio farm in 1993, leaving behind only a brief note about visiting kin for a church meeting. But they never returned. 9 years later, during a community memorial, a forgotten item reveals a shocking detail overlooked by all, a clue that would finally unravel the truth about their fate and expose a hidden betrayal. The morning sun spilled across the polished oak floor of Jonas Miller's home in Sugar Creek, Ohio, casting soft shadows that danced with the breeze through open windows. It was a day that came every year, not with joy but with quiet sorrow, a memorial for his brother, Samuel, his sister-in-law Anna, and their 5 children, Jacob, Daniel, Hannah, Esther, and little Benjamin, who'd been just 3 when they vanished in 1993. 9 years had passed since that September morning when Samuel's farm was found empty, save for a note on the kitchen table. Gone to visit kin for church matters, back Monday. Neighbor boys will tend livestock. They never returned. Jonas adjusted a wooden chair in his living room, now rearranged for the annual service. The sofa had been moved to the barn, replaced by rows of simple benches facing the small table at the front. The community had gathered at 7:30 a.m., men in black suits and wide-brimmed hats, women in prayer caps and dark dresses, their faces etched with shared grief. For 3 hours they'd prayed, sung hymns in Pennsylvania Dutch, and shared memories of the Miller family. Bishop Ezra Troyer spoke of trusting God's plan, even when it was shrouded in mystery. Now as the clock neared 11 o'clock, most had left, returning to their farms, leaving only a close circle, family, dear friends, and a few elders who'd known Samuel since boyhood. Jonas looked at the small group, his cousin, Abram Stoltzfus, and his wife Lydia, their faces lined with years of unanswered questions. Sarah Lapp, Anna's closest friend, clutching a handkerchief, and elder Joseph Yoder, whose farm neighbored Samuel's abandoned fields. "Shall we begin?" Jonas asked, gesturing to the table where mementos of the family lay, a photograph, a quilt square Anna had sewn, a wooden toy Daniel had carved, and the note, preserved in a plastic sleeve. Jonas lifted the note, its words etched in his memory from years of rereading. Samuel's neat script read, "Gone to visit kin for church matters, back Monday. Neighbor boys will tend livestock." Simple, unremarkable, yet it was all they'd left behind. "Every year we read this," Sarah said softly, her voice thick. "Every year, I wonder what church matters could have taken them away so suddenly." Abram nodded, his beard streaked with gray. "We checked with every relative, Lancaster, Holmes County, even Indiana. No one saw them. They had no kin to visit that weekend." Lydia reached for the photograph, taken a week before the disappearance. It showed the family in their yard, Samuel tall and broad-shouldered, Anna beside him holding Benjamin. The other children, Jacob, 14, Daniel, 12, Hannah, 10, Esther, 8, standing in a row, their plain clothes tidy, smiles bright. Behind them, a clothesline sagged with laundry, a detail that had always seemed ordinary. "Such a beautiful family," Lydia whispered. Jacob would be 23 now, Daniel 21, Hannah 19, Esther 17, and Benjamin. He'd be 12. Her voice broke on the youngest's name. Jonas opened a folder of police reports, the paper yellowed with age. The investigation had been brief. Amish reluctance to involve English authorities, limited cooperation. After questioning neighbors and finding no signs of struggle, the police concluded the family had left voluntarily, perhaps to start anew elsewhere. The case went cold within months. "We thought they'd come back," Joseph Yoder said, his voice heavy. "We don't run to outsiders with our troubles. We believed it was God's will." "But it never felt right," Sarah said, her eyes on the note. Anna would never leave her garden untended or her quilts unfinished. Samuel was planning to expand the barn that fall. They had no reason to go. Abram picked up the photograph, studying it closely, his brow furrowing. "Jonas," he said slowly, "this picture, It was taken the morning they left, yes? Jonas nodded. Samuel said they were leaving right after breakfast. Why? Abram turned the photo toward the group, pointing to the clothesline. Look at the laundry, freshly hung, still wet at the edges. See how the shirts are darker at the hems? Anna hung them that morning. The group leaned in, examining the image. Sarah's breath caught. Why would Anna do laundry if they were leaving for the weekend? No Amish woman would leave wet clothes out for days. They'd mildew, fade in the sun. Jonas squinted at the clothesline, noticing something new. Among the plain blues and blacks was a bright red scarf, out of place in the family's modest wardrobe. That scarf, he said, his voice tightening. It's not Amish. Too bright, too English. Lydia gasped. That's Sheriff Carter's scarf, John Carter. He was always around, helping Samuel with chores, checking on the community after storms. A good man, respectful of our ways. Jonas's heart skipped. Carter, I remember him. He led the investigation when Samuel disappeared. Came by often, even after the case went cold, to check on us and my wife Rachel, before she passed. Joseph Yoder nodded. He was kind, never pushed us to adopt English ways. But why would his scarf be in Anna's laundry? Jonas studied the photo, the red scarf glaring against the plain clothes. I don't recall Carter ever asking for it back. Rachel packed up Samuel and Anna's things after the first year, when we lost hope. Maybe the scarf's still in their house. Sarah's eyes were sharp with hope. We should find it, Jonas. It might mean nothing, but after 9 years, any clue could help. Esther, Jonas's mother, who'd been silent, spoke up. Jonas, what could Carter do now? The police closed the case. We chose to accept God's will. But we never found peace, Sarah countered. We gather every year because we can't let go. Maybe this is God's way of showing us a path to answers. Jonas nodded, resolve hardening. I'll look for the scarf. If it's there, I'll return it to Sheriff Carter and ask about the laundry. It's only right. The group spent another hour handling the mementos, Anna's quilt square, Jacob's whittled horse, a drawing by Hannah of their farm. Each item was passed with reverence, accompanied by a memory or prayer. As noon approached, the gathering dispersed, buggies rolling down the gravel drive. We'll see you at church tomorrow, Abram said, adjusting his hat. Thank you for hosting, Jonas, Lydia added. It means much to remember them here, in a home. Jonas glanced at his mother. It was Mother's idea. She thought being where Samuel lived might bring us closer to the truth. Esther began gathering the photos and papers, her movements slow and deliberate. I'll help put the furniture back, she offered. No, Mother, rest, Jonas said. I'll take you home and handle this later. Jonas drove Esther to her small, dowdy house on the family property, his mind on the red scarf and Carter's role. After settling her, he headed to Samuel's house, a 10-minute drive along rural roads. The property was overgrown, the once tidy farmhouse weathered, its paint peeling under the weight of neglect. The key turned stiffly in the lock, and the air inside was thick with dust and memories. Jonas began his search in the front room, where Rachel had boxed up Samuel's belongings after her death 2 years ago. The closets held only cobwebs and empty hangers. The pantry was bare, its shelves stripped. Upstairs, in the master bedroom, he found a cedar chest at the foot of the bedframe, its lid heavy with dust. Inside were neatly folded items: Samuel's work shirt, a child's apron, and there, on top, the red scarf, still vibrant, carefully washed and folded by Anna 9 years ago. Jonas lifted it, the fabric soft but jarring in its brightness. Why had Carter left it behind? Why had Anna washed it? He pulled out his cell phone, a concession for his carpentry business, and found Sheriff John Carter's number, saved from years ago when Carter had helped with a theft at the shop. The call went to voicemail. Sheriff Carter, this is Jonas Miller. I found something of yours at my brother Samuel's house. I'd like to return it and talk. Please call me. He hesitated, then ended the call. Explaining over voicemail felt wrong. He considered the police station, but remembered the community's unease with English authorities. A face-to-face meeting was better. Tucking the scarf under his arm, Jonas locked the house and drove to the Sugar Creek police station, a small brick building with a faded flag out front. The receptionist, Officer Jenkins, looked up. "I'm here for Sheriff Carter," Jonas said. "He's out on patrol," Jenkins replied. "Could be back in an hour or not till evening. Want to leave a message?" "No, thank you," Jonas said. "I'll come back tomorrow." "It's personal." Back in his car, Jonas sat, the scarf on the passenger seat. A memory surfaced, Samuel mentioning land developers years ago, pressuring him to sell his farm. They'd wanted his 50 acres for a project, but Samuel refused. Jonas drove to Samuel's second property, a 30-acre parcel with a vacant farmhouse, 10 minutes away. The land was prime, but no buyers had emerged in 9 years, the stigma of the disappearance lingering. As he approached, he noticed a familiar patrol car idling across the road, Sheriff Carter. Jonas parked and walked over. Carter lowered his window, his face lined but warm. "Jonas Miller, good to see you. How are you holding up?" "Well, thank you," Jonas said. "I was looking for you. Found this at Samuel's house." He held up the red scarf. Carter's eyes widened, then softened. "My old scarf. Forgot all about it. Must have left it that morning. They disappeared. Anna insisted on washing it after I spilled coffee during a visit. She wouldn't take no for an answer." "You were there that morning?" Jonas asked, his voice steady but probing. Carter nodded. "Stopped by to talk to Samuel about some land issues. Developers were circling, causing trouble for your community. I was checking in, making sure no one was harassing him." Jonas's mind raced. Samuel mentioned developers once. Said they wanted his land for a road or something. Carter's expression tightened. "Yeah, there was a company pushing hard back then. We worked with the township to block their plans." Samuel was worried, though. Jonas hesitated, then mentioned, "I saw something odd today at Abram Stoltzfus's farm. 2 men in dark uniforms, no badges, pressuring him to sell his land. Left this." He handed Carter a plain business card. Land Development Associates, with only a phone number. Carter studied it, his jaw tight. "I'll look into it. Can't have folks intimidating your community. I'll visit Abram myself." Jonas nodded, reassured by Carter's concern. "Thank you. You've always been good to us." Carter started his engine. "I'll call you about that scarf, Jonas. And we should talk more about Samuel's case. Might be worth revisiting." As Carter drove off, Jonas felt a flicker of hope. The scarf, the developers, the laundry, small threads, but maybe they'd lead to the truth about his family. Jonas Miller sat in his carpentry shop, the red scarf folded neatly on the workbench beside a half-finished rocking chair. The scent of sawdust and linseed oil filled the air, grounding him, but his mind was elsewhere. On Sheriff John Carter's reaction to the scarf, the developers pressuring Abram Stoltzfus, and the nagging detail of Anna's laundry, hung fresh the morning Samuel's family vanished in 1993. 9 years of unanswered questions weighed on him, but the memorial service had stirred something new. The scarf, vibrant and out of place in Anna's washing, felt like a thread to pull, a clue to unravel the mystery of his brother's family. Carter's promise to investigate the developers and revisit Samuel's case had given Jonas a flicker of hope, but the sheriff's quick departure yesterday, following a black truck down the road, left him uneasy. Why was Carter patrolling near Samuel's old farmhouse? And why had he seemed startled by the scarf? Jonas picked it up, running his thumb over the fabric. Anna, meticulous and practical, wouldn't have left laundry out for a weekend trip, especially not an English sheriff's scarf. Something was wrong. The shop's phone rang, jolting him. It was Sarah Lapp, Anna's closest friend. "Jonas, I've been thinking about the scarf," she said, her voice urgent. I remembered something. That morning, before they left, Anna mentioned Sheriff Carter stopping by. She said he was asking Samuel about land sales, said it was routine, but she seemed unsettled. I didn't think much of it then, but with the scarf in the photo. Jonas's grip tightened on the phone. Unsettled how? Sarah hesitated. She said Samuel was quieter than usual after Carter left, like he was wrestling with something heavy. I asked if everything was all right, but she brushed it off, said it was just church matters. That's what the note said too. Jonas's heart quickened. Church matters was starting to feel like a cover. Sarah, I'm going to see Carter today. I need to know why he was there, why his scarf ended up in Anna's laundry. Sarah's voice softened. Be careful, Jonas. I trust Carter. He's helped our community for years, but something about this feels off. If you find anything, tell me. Jonas promised he would and hung up, the scarf now heavy in his hands. He tucked it into his satchel, along with the photograph from the memorial, and headed for his car. The police station was his first stop. The Sugar Creek police station was quiet, the morning sun glinting off its brick facade. Officer Jenkins, the receptionist, looked up as Jonas entered. Sheriff Carter's out, he said before Jonas could speak. Been on patrol since early. You can leave a message or try tomorrow. Jonas shook his head. This can't wait. Do you know where he's patrolling? I have something of his. He held up the scarf, watching Jenkins's reaction. The officer's eyes flickered, but he shrugged. No idea. He's been spending a lot of time out near the rural properties lately. Try the east side, near the old Miller farm. Jonas's stomach tightened. Samuel's farmhouse was on the east side. Thank you, he said, turning to leave. As he stepped outside, a black truck pulled into the lot, the same one he'd seen at Abrams' farm. Two men in dark uniforms, no badges, no logo, stepped out, their faces hard. Jonas recognized them from yesterday's confrontation. They didn't notice him, heading straight into the station. Jonas hesitated, then decided to follow Carter's trail. If the sheriff was near Samuel's property, maybe he'd found something, or was hiding something. The drive to Samuel's farmhouse took Jonas through rolling fields, the September light casting long shadows. As he neared the property, he spotted Carter's patrol car parked off the road near the old barn. Jonas pulled over, his heart pounding, and approached on foot, the scarf and photo in his satchel. Carter was standing by the barn, speaking to a man in a business suit, someone Jonas didn't recognize. The man was gesturing at the land, a map spread out on the hood of Carter's car. Jonas stayed low, using a hedge for cover, straining to hear. The deal's still viable, the suited man said, his voice sharp. The Miller land is key. Without it, the road can't go through. You said you'd handle the community. Carter's voice was low, tense. I've done my part. Most of the families are open to selling now, but the Stoltzfus holdouts are stubborn. They trust me, but not enough to sign yet. The suited man's tone hardened. You've had 9 years, Carter. We can't wait forever. If they won't sell, we'll find other ways, like before. Jonas's blood ran cold, like before. He crouched lower, his hands shaking as he clutched the satchel. Was Carter involved in Samuel's disappearance? The sheriff who'd helped with barn raisings, who'd led the investigation, who'd promised to look into the developers, had he been playing both sides? Carter glanced around, and Jonas ducked, his heart racing. I'll talk to Abram Stoltzfus again, Carter said. But we need to be careful. The community's starting to ask questions. That memorial stirred things up. The suited man folded the map. Handle it, or we will. You know what's at stake. He walked to a sedan parked nearby and drove off, leaving Carter alone. Jonas waited until Carter returned to his patrol car and drove away before standing, his mind reeling. Carter wasn't just a friend of the Amish, he was working with developers, possibly the same ones who'd pressured Samuel 9 years ago. Jonas needed to confront him, but not yet. He needed more, something concrete to tie Carter to the disappearance. He drove to Samuel's house, the scarf and photo now burning questions in his satchel. Inside, the air was still stale, the cedar chest where he'd found the scarf now a reminder of Anna's careful hands. He searched the chest again, hoping for more clues. Beneath a folded quilt, he found a small notebook, Samuel's, its pages filled with his precise handwriting. Most were farm records, but the last entry, dated September 12, 1993, caught his eye. Met with Carter. Asked about land offers. Says to trust him, but something feels wrong. Developers won't stop. Praying for guidance. Jonas's breath caught. Samuel had suspected Carter. The notebook was proof, small, but enough to justify digging deeper. He tucked it into his satchel and drove to Abram Stoltzfus's farm, needing to warn him about Carter and the developers. Abram was in his barn, repairing a harness when Jonas arrived. "Abram, we need to talk," Jonas said, showing him the notebook entry. "Carter's involved with those men pressuring you to sell. I overheard him today, talking about a deal, saying they'd handle the community like before." Abram's face paled. "Like before? You think he had something to do with Samuel?" Jonas nodded. "The scarf, the laundry, this note, it's all connected. Samuel didn't trust Carter at the end. We need to be careful." Abram set the harness down, his hands steady but his eyes troubled. "I'll call a meeting with the elders tonight. We'll decide what to do. But Jonas, if Carter's betraying us, we can't go to the police yet, not without proof. They trust him more than us." That evening, Jonas met with the elders at Bishop Ezra Troyer's home. The group, Ezra, Joseph Yoder, and 2 others, listened as Jonas shared the scarf, the photo, the notebook, and what he'd overheard. Ezra's face was grave. "This is troubling, Jonas. Sheriff Carter has been our friend for years. To think he could be involved," Joseph Yoder spoke up. "Samuel mentioned developers to me too, before he vanished. Said they were aggressive, offering money but hinting at trouble if he refused. I thought it was just English greed. Now I wonder." The elders agreed to keep the matter quiet, but urged Jonas to find more evidence before confronting Carter. "God guides us to truth," Ezra said, "but we must be wise. If Carter is false, others may be too." Jonas left the meeting with a plan, returned to Samuel's farmhouse property. If developers wanted it so badly, there might be clues there. The next morning, he drove to the 30-acre parcel, its for sale sign weathered and leaning. The farmhouse stood empty, its windows dark, but Jonas noticed fresh tire tracks in the gravel drive, too wide for a buggy, too recent for his last visit. He parked and approached cautiously, the notebook and scarf in his satchel. Inside, the house was as he'd left it, but a faint smell of cigarette smoke lingered, unusual for an Amish property. In the kitchen, he found a crumpled business card on the floor, identical to the one from Abram's farm, Land Development Associates, just a phone number. His pulse quickened. Someone had been here recently. He searched the house, finding nothing until he reached the attic. A loose floorboard caught his attention, and beneath it was a small metal box, locked but rusted. Jonas pried it open with a screwdriver from his car. Inside were papers, land deeds, bank statements, and a letter in Samuel's handwriting. "If you find this, I'm likely gone. The developers are not what they seem. Carter knows more than he says. Protect the community." Attached was a list of names, none familiar except one. David Klein, a local real estate agent. Jonas's heart raced. Samuel had hidden evidence, suspecting danger. Why hadn't he told anyone? Jonas tucked the box's contents into his satchel and drove to the police station, determined to confront Carter with the notebook and letter. But as he pulled into the lot, he saw Carter's patrol car speeding out, followed by the black truck. Instinct took over. Jonas followed, keeping his distance. The vehicles headed toward the rural hills, a remote area with a narrow road climbing into the forest. Jonas's car struggled on the incline, but he kept the truck in sight. After 20 minutes, Carter and the truck stopped at a gated construction site, a chain-link fence surrounding what looked like a half-built community center. Jonas parked behind a thicket, watching as Carter and the two men from the truck met a third in a suit, possibly David Klein. Their voices carried faintly. "The Amish are asking questions," Carter said, his tone sharp. "That memorial stirred things up. We need to move faster." The suited man replied, "The Miller land is the last piece. Get it done, or we'll handle it like we did 9 years ago." Jonas's blood ran cold. He pulled out his phone, but there was no signal. He needed to get closer to hear more, but the risk was high. Slipping on a worker's vest he found hanging on the fence, he crept toward the site, blending with the sparse crew. The men were near a bulldozer, pointing to a cleared area marked with orange paint. "We buried it deep," one said. "No one's found it in 9 years." Jonas's heart stopped. Buried what? He edged closer, hiding behind a stack of lumber, and heard Carter say, "If Jonas Miller keeps digging, we'll have to deal with him too." Panic surged, but Jonas stayed still, listening. The suited man handed Carter a folder. "Payment for your silence. Keep the Amish in line, and we'll make it worth your while." Carter took the folder, his face unreadable. Jonas's hands shook as he backed away, shedding the vest and running to his car. He drove down the hill until he had a signal and called 911. "This is Jonas Miller. I'm near the old Miller farmhouse on Hill Road. Sheriff Carter's involved in something illegal, maybe connected to my brother's disappearance. I overheard him at a construction site with developers. They're talking about something buried there." The dispatcher was calm but firm. "Stay where you are, Mr. Miller. We're sending state police. Don't approach anyone." Jonas waited, his heart pounding, the satchel with Samuel's letter and the scarf beside him. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. 3 state police cars roared past, heading to the site. Jonas followed, praying he wasn't too late. At the construction site, chaos erupted. Officers swarmed the area, weapons drawn but pointed down. Carter and the developers froze, caught off guard. "Sheriff Carter, step away from the others," a state trooper ordered. Carter's face paled, but he complied, raising his hands. The 2 men in dark uniforms tried to run but were tackled by officers. Jonas parked and approached, clutching the satchel. A trooper, Sergeant Evans, noticed him. "Mr. Miller, you made the call?" Jonas nodded, handing over the notebook and letter. "My brother hid these." He suspected Carter and the developers. "They're hiding something here, something buried." Evans scanned the papers, his expression hardening. "We'll need your full statement, but first, we're securing the site." Officers moved to the marked area, where a bulldozer had begun digging. Within minutes, a trooper shouted, "We've got remains." "Human bones." Jonas's legs buckled. "Remains? His family?" Carter's voice rose, panicked. "This is a mistake, I didn't." "Save it," Evans snapped, cuffing him. The developers were shouting for lawyers, but the officers were unmoved. As Jonas watched, a car pulled up, and a young woman stepped out, her face pale but familiar. Hannah, Samuel's daughter, now 19, her prayer cap slightly askew. "Uncle Jonas." She called, running to him. Jonas's heart stopped. "Hannah, you're alive?" She nodded, tears streaming. "I escaped that night. Dad sent me away, said it wasn't safe. I've been hiding, but I know what happened to them." Jonas Miller stood frozen in the chaos of the construction site, his heart pounding as he stared at Hannah, his niece, who had just stepped out of a car, her face pale but unmistakably hers. 9 years had passed since Samuel, Anna, and their 5 children vanished from their Sugar Creek, Ohio farm in 1993, leaving only a note about visiting kin. Now Hannah, who would be 19, stood before him, her prayer cap slightly askew, her eyes filled with tears and determination. "Uncle Jonas," she said again, her voice trembling as she ran to him, throwing her arms around him. "You're alive?" Jonas whispered, gripping her shoulders, barely believing it. The state police swarmed around them, their radios crackling as they secured the site where human remains had just been uncovered. Sheriff John Carter and 2 developers in dark uniforms were in handcuffs, their protests drowned out by officers' commands. Sergeant Evans, the state trooper leading the scene, approached, his face stern. "Mr. Miller, who's this?" Jonas's voice shook. "My niece, Hannah Miller. She says she escaped the night her family disappeared." Hannah nodded, wiping her tears. "I know what happened to them, Uncle Jonas. Dad sent me away to protect me. I've been hiding, but I couldn't stay silent anymore, not after I heard about the memorial and the scarf." Sergeant Evans gestured to a nearby police van, offering a quieter space. "Miss Miller, Mr. Miller, we need your statements. This is a crime scene now." Jonas and Hannah followed, the weight of the moment pressing on them. Inside the van, Hannah sat close to Jonas, clutching his hand as if anchoring herself to reality. Evans sat across from them, a recorder running. "Start from the beginning, Miss Miller," he said gently. "What happened to your family?" Hannah took a shaky breath, her eyes distant. "That morning, September 12, 1993, Dad was upset. Sheriff Carter came to our house early, before breakfast. I was in the kitchen with Mom, helping with bread, but I could hear them talking in the front room. Dad was angry, said Carter was pushing him to sell our land to some developers. Carter kept saying it was for the good of the community, that the money would help us. But Dad didn't trust him. He said the developers were hiding something, that their offers felt like threats." Jonas's heart clenched, remembering the notebook entry he'd found. "Met with Carter. Asked about land offers. Says to trust him, but something feels wrong. What happened next?" he asked softly. Hannah's voice wavered. "After Carter left, Dad told Mom he'd found papers, bank records, land deeds, showing the developers were paying Carter to pressure Amish families. Dad was going to take it to the bishop and maybe the English police, but he was scared. He told me to go to Aunt Rachel's in Lancaster that night, said it wasn't safe for me to stay. I was only 10, I didn't understand why, but I obeyed. I took a bus with a neighbor heading that way. That evening, Dad wrote the note about visiting kin, but it was a lie to buy time. He sent me away because he knew they were coming for him." Tears streamed down her face. "I never saw them again." Jonas squeezed her hand, his own eyes burning. "Why didn't you tell anyone, Hannah? Why hide for 9 years? Hannah's voice broke. "I was terrified. Aunt Rachel took me in, but she died a year later. I was passed between relatives, always told to stay quiet, that Dad wanted it that way. I thought if I spoke up, they'd come for me too. But last week, I saw a news story about the memorial and the scarf. I knew it was Dad's way of leaving a clue. I contacted the state police anonymously, and when they found remains today, I had to come." Evans leaned forward, his expression intense. "Miss Miller, do you have any of those papers your father found?" Hannah nodded, reaching into her bag and pulling out a small sealed envelope. "Dad gave me this before I left. He said if anything happened to him, I should keep it safe until I could trust someone. I didn't open it until last week." She handed the envelope to Evans, who opened it carefully. Inside were photocopies of bank statements, land transfer records, and a letter in Samuel's handwriting. "To anyone who finds this, the developers are not what they seem. Sheriff Carter is on their payroll. They want our land for profit, not progress. I've hidden more evidence in the farmhouse attic. Protect our community." Jonas's breath caught. The metal box he'd found in the attic, the deeds, the bank records, matched this. Samuel had prepared for the worst, entrusting Hannah with the key to exposing Carter's betrayal. Evans scanned the documents, his jaw tightening. "This is explosive. Carter's been named as a liaison for Amish affairs, trusted by your community and the department. If he's been taking bribes, it's not just fraud, it's a conspiracy." He stood, speaking into his radio. "Get these to the forensics team and the FBI. We need a full sweep of the Miller farmhouse and this site. Jonas looked at Hannah, pride and pain mingling. You kept this safe all these years. Your father would be proud. Hannah's eyes filled with tears. I just wish I'd come forward sooner. I was so scared. Jonas hugged her tightly. You're here now. That's what matters. The construction site buzzed with activity as state police and FBI agents arrived, cordoning off the area. The remains, bones of varying sizes, some clearly those of children, were carefully excavated, each fragment tagged and bagged. Jonas watched, his heart heavy, knowing they were likely his brother, Anna, and their children, Jacob, Daniel, Esther, and little Benjamin. Carter, now in a patrol car, was shouting about a misunderstanding, but his voice was drowned out by the officer's efficiency. The two developers, identified as Mark Davidson and Paul Reed, were cuffed and silent, their earlier arrogance gone. Evans returned to Jonas and Hannah. We've got more. Carter's talking, trying to save himself. He claims he didn't mean for it to go this far, says the developers forced his hand. Jonas's voice was cold. Forced him to kill my family? Evans hesitated. He says it was an accident. The developers lured your family to this site under the pretense of a meeting about the land. When Samuel refused their final offer and threatened to go to the police, things escalated. Carter claims one of the developers, Reed, attacked Samuel, and it spiraled. They couldn't leave witnesses go. His voice trailed off, sparing Hannah the details. Hannah sobbed, and Jonas held her, his own tears falling. They killed them all? Even Benjamin? Evans nodded grimly. The remains suggest a family of 7. We'll confirm with DNA, but it matches your description. Carter says they buried them here, thinking the site wouldn't be developed for years. They plan to build a fake Amish heritage center to cover it, profiting off your community's memory. Jonas felt sick. The Amish Heritage Memorial in the architectural model he'd seen at Davidson's office wasn't a tribute. It was a mockery, a tourist trap built on his family's graves. What about the land? He asked. Why did they want it so badly? Evans pulled out a map from the evidence pile. This site and your brother's farm are key to a planned highway extension and commercial development. Shopping centers, housing, resorts. The Amish lands are the last holdout. They've been buying up properties quietly, using intimidation when money didn't work. Carter was their inside man, using his trust with your community to pressure families. Jonas thought of Samuel's notebook, the letter, the scarf, all pieces of a puzzle his brother had left to protect their way of life. Carter betrayed us, he said quietly. He ate at our tables, helped our children, all while working for them. Hannah's voice was fierce despite her tears. Dad knew. That's why he sent me away. He wanted me to live, to tell the truth one day. Evans nodded. Your father's evidence, combined with what we've found, is enough to charge Carter, Davidson, and Reed with multiple counts of murder, fraud, and conspiracy. The FBI's seizing their office records now. This goes beyond Sugar Creek. There's a network of developers across Ohio involved. Jonas looked at the construction site, now a crime scene. The half-built structure a grim monument to greed. Will they find all of them? He asked. The remains? Evans's expression softened. We're doing everything we can. The site's large, but we'll search every inch. You'll be able to bury them properly. As the sun dipped below the hills, casting the site in a golden glow, Jonas and Hannah were escorted to the state police station for formal statements. Detective Sarah Chun, an FBI agent, met them in a quiet room. Mr. Miller, Miss Miller, I'm sorry for your loss, she said, her voice compassionate. But your courage has broken this case wide open. We've arrested 3 more associates based on Carter's confession, and we're tracing the money trail. Your brother's evidence is key. Jonas handed over the metal box from the attic, its contents corroborating Hannah's envelope. Samuel wanted to protect our community, he said. He died for it. Chun nodded, reviewing the documents. He was a hero. These records show payments to Carter going back a decade, plus plans for the development that would have erased your farms. We're working with the township to protect your land now. Hannah spoke up, her voice steady despite her grief. Dad told me to wait until it was safe. I was a child then, scared and alone. But I kept his papers, moved between relatives, stayed out of sight. I worked as a seamstress in Lancaster, always watching for a sign it was time to come forward. When I saw the news about the memorial, I knew. Jonas looked at her, pride swelling. You're as brave as your father, Hannah. You carried his truth all these years. She smiled through her tears. I just wanted to make him proud. Chun closed her notebook. You both have. Carter's facing life without parole, and the developers will follow. We're also investigating other disappearances in the region. There may be more victims. Your brother stopped something much bigger than he knew. The station hummed with activity as agents processed evidence and interrogated suspects. Jonas and Hannah watched through a window as Carter was led to a holding cell, his uniform stripped, his face a mask of defeat. Davidson and Reed followed, their suits rumpled, their confidence shattered. Jonas thought of the years of memorial services, the community's quiet acceptance of God's will, their reluctance to push for answers. We should have questioned more, he said quietly. We trusted Carter, believed he was our friend. Hannah squeezed his hand. Dad didn't. He saw the truth, and he made sure it would come out, even if it took 9 years. Jonas nodded, the weight of his brother's sacrifice settling in. Samuel had fought for their way of life, protecting their land, their faith, their future. Hannah's survival was his final gift, a living witness to his courage. As they left the station, the sky was darkening, Mount Hood's silhouette faint in the distance. Jonas drove Hannah to his mother Esther's Dottie house, where the community would gather to mourn and plan a proper burial. Esther met them at the door, her face crumpling when she saw Hannah. My girl, she whispered, pulling her into a hug. You're alive. Hannah sobbed, clinging to her grandmother. I'm sorry I stayed away, Grossmanny. Dad told me to hide. Esther stroked her hair. You're here now. That's God's grace. They sat together, Jonas recounting the day's events, the remains, Carter's betrayal, the developer's greed. Esther listened, tears streaming, but her voice was steady. Samuel always stood for what was right. He'd be proud of you both. Jonas nodded, thinking of the cedar chest, the scarf, the notebook, small clues that had led to this moment. The community would bury Samuel, Anna, and their children with reverence, their graves a testament to their faith and resilience. The next morning, Jonas and Hannah met with Bishop Ezra Troyer and the elders to share the truth. The community gathered in the meeting house, their faces a mix of grief and resolve. Ezra spoke of forgiveness but also justice, urging the Amish to work with the authorities to protect their land. Samuel's sacrifice reminds us to be vigilant, he said. We trust in God, but we must also guard our home. Jonas and Hannah helped plan the funeral, choosing a plot in the community cemetery where the family could rest together. The FBI continued their investigation, uncovering more evidence of the developer's network, bank accounts, fake companies, even connections to other rural communities targeted for land grabs. Carter's confession led to the arrest of a dozen associates, and the township halted all development plans on Amish land, ensuring its preservation. Jonas stood with Hannah at the cemetery a week later, the graves freshly dug, the community gathered in quiet prayer. The caskets held what remains could be recovered, each adorned with a simple cross. Hannah held Benjamin's tiny shoe, found among the evidence, her fingers tracing its worn leather. They're home now, she whispered. Jonas nodded, his voice thick. Your father fought for us all. His truth lives in you. As the bishop led a final hymn, Jonas felt a peace he hadn't known in 9 years. The not knowing was over. Samuel's family was laid to rest, their legacy secured by Hannah's courage and the community's resolve. The developers' greed had been exposed, their plans thwarted, and Carter's betrayal, Once a trusted friend would haunt him in a prison cell. Jonas looked at Hannah, her face serene despite her grief, and knew Samuel's spirit endured in her strength, in the land they'd saved, and in the faith that held them together.
Thank you for watching our channel Modern Stories. If you liked our video, you should subscribe for more amazing videos like this. Have a healthy and happy day. See you in the next one.